Hi.
Well, welcome back to the Wolf and the Bear podcast. We are joined today by a very special guest, Miss Lauren Danvers. She is somebody that I'm really excited to have a conversation with because we're going to talk about really just nerdy questions about metaphysics, highlighting sort of around 2025. We got together because I was telling her, I thought about her today because I was doing this newsletter for kind of addressing why 2025 is important and why the narrative around our soul and the nature of it and the definition of it is really the highlight of the year. And then I know she cares about stuff like that. And then she was like, we should just sit down and talk. And I thought, I have the perfect place. Um, I don't know if she knows this or not, but she has a very, very high affinity and gift towards processing grief and the process of a rebirth. So I'll talk to her more about that here in a bit. But there is a very interesting relationship to almost the cleanup crew after a tragedy is almost sort of the attunement that you have, the gift that you have, the thing that you can offer to the universe again. And unfortunately, the cost of that gift was you having to do it in your life on many different levels and having to do it very unsupported or unsupported in a deceptive way so that you had to go back later and dig through the details again to see the event again, because that is what others will have to do, and you will be the one that coaches them through that. And you have a high empathy that was actually something that she ran from a long time. So I cannot wait to kind of discuss her journey and for her to share what she wants to about that, and sometimes how we're going to talk about why that matters in the 2025 and how to move forward with that. But anywho, Miss Lauren, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank
You
you.
the best.
Thank you for
Yeah,
inviting me. I'm a little
of
nervous.
course. Don't be nervous.
Okay.
Um, but okay, so how do you want to start? I don't really care. What's your favorite question off the top of your brain? And then we'll go into the astrology. We'll get to where we need to organically. I just know it.
Well, I was wanting to know about what we were talking about earlier. You said that we were ending three like major long cycles. I was really curious to know more about that, actually.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, um, so in Vedic, I want to almost say scripture, but really it's text, right? It's just like our religion. It's an amalgamation of texts that reference each other, and through its reference of each other, it's validated by itself, essentially. And so a lot of the stories in the Vedas specifically, and a lot of documentation of time, they are also one of the known cultures that has protected the concept of the precession within their astrological clock. And for anybody who doesn't know, the precession is basically this understanding that the earth has a tendency to have a wobble, and it wobbles back and forth until it is a little bit off from quote unquote the original beginning. And so that is why, for instance, if you were to go into astrology and look, for instance, at me, December 10th, in Western tropical astrology, I am a Sagittarian. And in Vedic, due to the precession, I'm a Scorpio.
Okay.
And what does that really mean? That's a conversation for a different time. But in the Vedas themselves, and they are very, very accurate, there was this time of great darkness called the Kali Yuga, right? And it
Hmm.
is a very period of time, and it just ended. And the numbers kind of vacillate as far as who believes what to be true, but it ended between 2012 and 2020. And just like, for instance, with a finished moon cycle, right? It projects effects of itself 3 days before, 3 days after.
Hmm.
Well, in creation, any of these large events, they reverberate in a trinity before and a trinity after. So we were probably feeling a lot of it in the 40s and 50s,
Hmm.
right? And kind of mainly in the 19th-ish century. And then just because the heralding moment was then doesn't really, we're going to still be feeling the after effects as well. But that's one. Then you go into the Mayan calendar, which very strongly ended on the 12th. And that is the calendar that I feel the most information from, which I think is really interesting. It's almost as though the Vedic is too broad for me, or
Hmm.
maybe the implications feel too broad informationally. So either that means I'm not quite sure why that is. I'll have to let me see if they'll tell me. it was written with less fear. The Mayan thing was documented with the expectation of something very, very negative at the end. So it feels stronger to me. That makes sense. Oh, by the way, I never explained, and I should. So anyone who listens to the podcast, they're already used to all the weirdness and me and Terry and sort of how it goes. But for you, Lauren, you and I know each other in sort of more material world level.
Mm-hmm.
But essentially what happens is whenever I need information or whenever I get information about you, about anybody, I have to sort of be in an acknowledged open state. So for instance, at work, I can fall in and out of an open state if I'm not really being mindful, or if I'm accessing information that I'd like to have, or if
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking to someone about information that I would prefer to not have wrong. Because then I have to open it up to make sure that what I'm saying is accurate. And my speech pattern changes because it becomes significantly more specific, because
Mm-hmm.
that is a shared we have, is to be as accurate and honest as we can be, and
Okay.
detailed to prevent misunderstanding, to protect me karmically, by the way. Because
Oh,
if I
okay.
would prefer that the information I try to um, give has the least opportunity to be misunderstood and to thus have an unexpected effect.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so whenever I say hold on, or if I start, because the problem with that channel being open is that you could say something like, well, you know, I noticed an oak leaf on the ground. And then you keep talking. And I know probably already where you're going with it, which is, what do you think that meant? Or is there any meaning? But as you're talking, I could maybe have a conversation about what you want to know, which is like, what if there's any real effect on your life, or if it was not as impactful. And two, I might also be getting some depth of knowledge surrounding the symbolism of oak. Right. And
Right.
so that's not really helpful to what you're talking about, but it's still happening. And so that's why I have to sometimes, like, it can feel, I just have to maintain control of it. So
Right.
sometimes, like, if you start talking and I have to pause you,
Yeah.
the other thing that is very strong in it as well is, if we are going through you, because I am agreeing to be in an open channel with them,
Mm-hmm.
the rudeness thing, I would normally never interrupt people. And there's a lot of reasons for why I'm not as aggressive as when I'm in connection, but they are very specific. And so, for instance, if you say something that they feel is more of a problem than your ability to finish your sentence, we're going to address it in that moment. And that's very rude. I think it's rude, but that is something that is a reality here. So
Yeah, okay. Heard.
awesome. Awesome,
Understood.
Heard. Yes. I love it. Okay, cool. So anyways, so then we had the Mayan calendar. The Mayan calendar basically had much more energy surrounding just that, like, well, that it was an opportunity for them to come back, that they were marking the time that which it was going to make sense to return,
Mm-hmm.
which has some implications around some extraterrestrial origins of the Mayans, and the fact that there feels like there was a departure and then a gnosis that they would be back. And that is what is felt around their calendar. But again, also ironic and interesting that it ends in 2012 for us. Now, in 2025, we already had, and you mentioned it to me a while ago, that 7-planet arrival in the sky that hasn't happened in whatever. That's very, very cool, but it is not as rare as much.
Mm-hmm.
It is very impactful from the beginning of new beginnings. So almost every single astrological event in the sky in
Mm-hmm.
this year denotes new beginnings, which is very negative for some. And again,
Mm-hmm.
metaphysics is not what you think it is when we judge good and bad. And we'll go into that. But new beginnings, clearing, but also about almost this clean slate. And the one I'm the most excited about, that I think is the most interesting, is that all of the outer planets in this year shift into Aquarius, which hasn't happened in thousands of years. All of them do. We go into Aquarius in like, okay, how do I say this? Because to be 0 degrees Aries is the beginning of the cycle anyway, and 0 degrees of the 30, which in the houses is set up in a decan system of 30, and so for it to be 0 degrees in Aries, that has not happened in 12,000 years. If anyone listening has watched John Hancock and the whole ancient civilization thing, really all of that we keep just getting sent back to what happened in the Younger Dryas, 11,500, roughly 12,000 years ago.
And
And so
what was that?
it was the giant flood. It was the flood that then froze. It was an impact that seems to happened in an Arctic glacier. It seems that it really released a lot of water, causing the giant flood. A lot of things, but more importantly than that,
Mm-hmm.
we collectively endured and we still have had to process through a collective consciousness trauma, like a shutdown that occurred so deeply on our planet and within us that we just, I mean, and then you ask, the question would be, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Did all these cycles, right? Did they know we were going to get hit by an asteroid and that was going to reset everything? Was it part of our cycles and thus we brought in the asteroid to create the cycle that we already knew we needed?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Who knows? Who can say? But what we do know is that energy functions in cycles. And those cycles just exist oscillating at different frequencies if you want to get specific, in different octaves. So that's why spirals, right? If you're sitting here and you're accessing a spiral, eventually on the vertical line, you're returning to the same spot from that dimension, right? You don't really ever leave.
Yeah.
But then there's that broader side that you're oscillating in and out of. But then from this perspective, it looks like one straight line, right? So it's all of these. My point just being, because that's a different conversation. My point just being is that we know cycles exist.
Mm-hmm.
That's a giant one, right?
Mm-hmm.
And somehow we managed to be able to be privileged enough to be present at the end of a giant cycle, which to me is so cool because it means that we are bearing the closure of some collective PTSD. And I'm not sure we've done a great job. We have done our best. And we have done, I would say, relatively quite well, considering I would say our highest evil currently still on the planet would be towards animals and the earth.
Yeah.
Right? And of course, in pockets ourselves. But I do believe there were periods of time where there was a much higher reign of evil.
Yeah.
And more species to species criminality and oppression. And obviously that still happens now. But generally, the world is in peace more than it is in chaos.
Peril.
That seems to indicate we did okay.
Well, I feel like that. I feel that. Like I feel that closure, or I feel just an energy that something is happening. Like, you know what I mean?
Well, and the problem becomes this, and this is sort of the reason why I think I know what my next assignment is for the next couple of years, and I was reassured that I would be whatever came after that, I didn't need to worry about. But that this particular job that I have, this focus I have, will be not forever. And that purpose seems to be surrounding the topic of guiding and acknowledging and protecting people in finding their more authentic self. Because there is a process of creation, and that will come after it's you know how a wave goes up and down, right? Well, it also comes back up because there's itself and its shadow. We are meeting where the crossover is. That's what we're dealing with. There's this condension. We're being brought so small because we have a choice to make as this convergence occurs, and we have to go inward to answer those questions. And then once we make that decision, then we get to expand again, and that's when creation begins more.
It reminds me of a
right?
black
So it
hole.
will be about, well, it'll be less about the nature of the soul,
Right.
and what do we want and need, and it will be less heavy regarding that, and it will be more about like, I want that out there, so I'm going to go do it. But you feel this, I felt this, we all felt this. Ever since roughly around 2016, they just said, we have been called through everything that's happened to go inward. Whether we're hurt, whether old traumas come up, whether we lose our job, whether it seems like we just got shaken like a snow globe. And then we're basically told to sort out what falls. And good luck on how long that takes you. Good luck on being able to, because when people just get shaken up like that, there's no guarantee they make it out. People get stuck, they become stagnant, they devolve. Like, it's this time frame was always very, very risky, because if you can't stand back up in time, then where your vibration is at the point that we start growing again, start converging again, we become more stable in our decision about who we are. That's not a threat. It's not a bad thing. But I'm very motivated to have faith that everyone is quote unquote awake, is quote unquote willing to at least ask themselves who they might be in the current moment. Because a lot of the people that were capable of doing it on their own, they've already done it. It's 2025. This process began in 2020. You've done an amazing job of it. I've seen it.
It was
I didn't
rough.
know you.
It was
I didn't
rough.
know you well enough, but I knew you're indistinguishable to who you were when I met you, which is really beautiful. But none of us knew that none of us knew you were on time. Like, that's the pain of existence, is you were doing exactly what you were supposed to do and you were succeeding at it. And yet the entire time you were doing that, it probably just felt chaotic and painful and
It was.
completely like, am I going to be able to do this?
Yeah.
But
I'm so
here
much
we
happier
are.
now.
And me too. There was an ego death that occurred for me in 2019. I could have chosen a very negative path to deal with it, with addiction and suffering. And I did several times in micro doses. But at the end of the day, I was able to do it, and you were too. Because that's the other thing. It's a non-linear process to growth. You're just hoping it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and not 1 step forward, 1 step back. But it's always push and pull, breathe in, breathe out. Go make big changes about your energy, rest because those changes took from your battery.
Yeah.
Refill, and then go do big stuff, take a break and come back in. Make big decisions about vulnerability and step out into vulnerability, and then take some rest because you know that was scary and it took more than you should. You spent more than you could in that process, but every time you do it, you learn how to spend more efficiently. So it costs you less, or you come to find it's not good for your energy. And so then you stop doing it. And that's the factor of what we're trying to figure out.
Or you
We
learn
have to
something,
get,
or you just learn something about
that's what I
yourself.
mean.
Like,
That's what I mean. You stop doing it because it's not a match. How many times do we say, I'm going to go pick this up, it's not a match, and we keep doing it because we think we're supposed to? Right? It's like, what I have learned, and I still don't know. I mean, I'm trying, right? We're all just trying. But the truth seems to be this, and it's so simple, but it's so hard to know ourselves well enough to do. If you always pursue the thing that excites you, and we all know that feeling, not anxiety, excites you. And that is also the key to intuition. By the way, when I say excitement, it's almost this like non-physical agitation. And so if you ever hold up 2 like bags and you're like, hey, Lo, where's the cherry? There should be this like micro feeling of excitement in the direction of what you're seeking. Right? And that's intuition. That's knowing what you're seeking. You said you want the cherry. You should be able to feel the vibration of what you're after. And that's true always for every single soul-bearing individual. But the problem is they stop knowing how to say, I'm looking for the cherry. So they don't know where to see the excitement. And they don't know, and they stop being able to listen anyway. So the more drugs we do, the more promiscuous sex we have, the more density we kind of gather around us. The harder it is to feel. Oh, you're good. The harder it is for me to anybody to feel the agitation of what draws us. What is our passion? Arguably, the thing I hate hearing the most, unfortunately, sometimes is what is my purpose? And it's like, oh God, that's a big topic. But more than anything, can you become quiet enough at any given time to start resonating with yourself enough to where other things resonate with you? That's the only way you're going to know what works for you. And if you don't even know where your resonancy is, no one's got a chance in hell in finding their path.
And how do you do
Luckily,
that?
we're guided.
Like, how do you do that?
Well, yeah, that's the big question. It is the removal of everything that is not you. And in the paradox would seem to be, if you don't know who you are, how are you going to know what to remove? How would anyone?
How it feels, I
And so
guess.
that's why, well, how it feels is one avenue. That intuition,
Yeah.
sentimentality is
Hmm.
pretty hard to beat, but we still lie to ourselves quite a bit.
Yeah.
Or what if it's the topic of why? Why should terminate in truth at some point? Why am I doing this? So, like, let's pick something for you. Um, what's something you do that you don't like? And I can start with, I drink alone sometimes when I get anxious.
Something I do that
That's
I
what I
don't
do sometimes.
like. I a lot of things. Well, it's really what I don't do. It's like the things that
Okay.
yeah, the what I want to do that I feel like I'm in freeze mode. Like a lot of times, like there's things that I want to do, and I
Well,
hold
no, they just said we have to start. No, they said we have to pick something that you have already readily done in action over time, but that you wish you didn't. So it has to be something in the past, not something in the future you just wish you. So I guess what you're saying is you don't take action.
right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay,
So the
so
verb of it would be not taking action. Okay. Why?
why? I don't know. I don't know.
Well, then put it in. If you don't know, which most people,
I think it's
especially the
fear.
more
I think
awkward
it's
it gets,
fear.
of course. And just a trick, by the way, to you and to the audience, if you don't know with yourself, because we block that knowledge sometimes,
Fear and shame probably, but
pla place that in someone you know and ask why would they do it, and see if whatever you assume the reasons they do it are, it's probably the reasons you do it, because we are projective and the world is our mirror. So
okay,
if you don't ever know
that's a
the answer to
good
something, the trick is it's automatic. And we never know. Like if I have too much guilt or shame, I can't get down through it. I'll try. We all try. So you externalize it, learn from it, and then realize you are what you just externalized. So in your case, of course, fear and shame, but really fear first, shame after.
right.
Because fear, because you've submitted to the shame. And the only, or shame because you submitted to the fear. And the only reason, this is very curious to me, the only reason you would be ashamed of the fear instead of grateful that you didn't do it because of the fear means that your soul knows the fear isn't real.
Mm, interesting.
You wouldn't have a shame response to it
Well,
if you felt that your fear was legit protecting you and that you knew that it was, that the truth was your fear was preventing you from doing something that would get you in trouble. But when you feel shame, the trigger of something is not right and I am judging it, means that you recognize that you would like to at least try. Even if the fear is real,
hmm.
you know that you're shortchanging yourself
Oh
by
yeah.
not trying.
Oh, for sure.
And really, in this case too, fear and doubt, right? And there is no such thing. There's no such thing as a lack of trust in something. There is a truth that you trust the negative outcome more than you trust the positive one.
That could be true. Yeah.
So, well, that's the nature of doubt. You would not have doubt if you had trust, which means and you might feel like it's 50-50. But when you're betting on yourself, betting on your future, we don't take action on 50-50. It's not a good enough bet,
I guess how do we
right?
get rid of the
So a
doubt in
lot of
ourselves?
us, well, we just have to recognize that we're making a choice.
To
We are
yeah.
choosing to trust that we are choosing to say, I kind of believe that this outcome I'm afraid of has a high enough probability to come that that's not a risk I'm willing to take. I'm not willing to bet on myself in that way. And there's sometimes good reason. If you think that you're going to go take over the world, but you haven't made your bed in 5 years, there's reasons to believe we might not make it, right?
Hmm.
But so this is always a spectrum. There's a fine line. If you recognize that what you want is in front of you and it's logical for you to want it and it's within your reach technically, it just requires some things you're not in position yet to locomote, either through sheer laziness. For me, I hate when I get lazy, but I know when it's happening. Sheer laziness, fear, guilt, or really fear, shame, a lack of belief in self, all those things.
Yep.
Anyways, knowing that you're making a choice, because then it triggers offense in most people, because I'm offended at the thought that I wouldn't bet on myself. So it can sometimes shift by knowing that that's what the doubt is a choice on not betting on yourself. Sometimes it makes people much more willing to bet on themselves, because it puts you in that position of, why wouldn't you? Who else will? Like, if you have so much doubt, so much trust in something else working out than you, maybe that means you're misattuned. Or maybe it means you should bet on yourself, and you have to figure that out. Like, if you set a goal and you say, my goal is to lose 50 pounds in a year, and it's November and you haven't lost it, what does that tell us? It tells us that we were not attuned to that being a real goal for ourselves, because something was not yet in alignment with that. Either it was your ability to do so, your faith in oneself, your action and betting on oneself, like actually effort, quote unquote, if you want to put it that way.
Well,
or maybe it's misaligned in that time. You're supposed to lose it next year.
yeah, I'm
You see
like,
what I
how
mean?
do you,
Like,
I guess, how do you know what is in alignment with you?
by checking your alignment daily.
And how do you do that?
So, okay, so here's an example. I just posted, I actually just recorded a video. I'll post it soon. But this is a meditation and do you have a pen and paper in front of you?
Yep, right here.
All right, cool. And this is very, very fast. I am not a big meditator, and I've never been. Neither is Terry, which I think is very interesting. But I was doing a reading, and this is what they gave for that particular client, and then I kept it for myself because I thought it was rad. Okay, but you're basically going to draw a stick figure. You're going to draw the head. You're going to draw 2 legs. You're going to draw 2 arms. And then you're going to draw a heart. And that's your stick figure. All right. And this is diagnostic. And this is to be done in the morning. And this is not to change or adjust. Sit with yourself to get an answer, and then don't wiggle it around. And you'll see what I mean in a minute. But no, like, well, it could be this, but then I just, maybe I feel this way. And then, no, just get to be very real with yourself. Again, it's a choice. Choose your alignment. The head means temperament.
Okay.
It's your mental state, not your emotional. Are you impatient? Are you Are you frustrated? Like, it's different from saying I am feeling frustrated and I am in a frustrated state. And those states can last days, right? So that's why it's important to know, am I still pissed off? If you're fighting with your partner, you're going to be pissed off for multiple days, right? Feelings are they're much more fluttering. They're much more in the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're meant to be. But I'm saying, as a general understanding, where's your head at? We always ask each other or ourselves, where's our head at? That's what it means. And rank it 0 to 10. 10 being in an ideal state of balance and peace, right? And 0 being, I could blow up the world right now.
Okay.
I'm so unstable. I don't feel stable. And so for me, the other day, I woke up and I felt a little bit frustrated, and I felt very overwhelmed for no reason. So I put 4. Right. So if you put that's 40%, whatever. Okay. You go down to the arms. Arms equal strength, in the sense of, what can you carry that day? What is your load-bearing reality? And they are not connected, right? Do not connect them. Start to become good at isolating them, in the sense of, I might be in a shitty mood, but I actually have a lot of energy today. And I have a lot of chores, so I can get everything done, but my mood is bad. But that's what I know about myself. Or you could be in an amazing mood and have 0 sleep and just chill and just say, my mood's really good. I can't lift a thing. Don't ask me to do anything. I can't.
Yeah.
You drop down into the heart. Your heart is your emotional availability to the world. to the world. And so again, see how this is diagnostic and not connected from the perspective of your mood might be great and you might have a ton of energy,
Right, I see.
but you have nothing to give to somebody because you need to get all this stuff done. So you can't take phone calls in the day because you know that there's a chance that that might suck energy from you, from your arms, might take strength from you. It might mess up your temperament. So to protect those other two things being optimized, your emotional availability is not great that day.
Mm-hmm.
In your own best good, in your own
Mm-hmm.
highest good.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe somebody dumped on you all day yesterday and your temperament is good and your strength is good, but you just don't feel like fucking with it today. Know that about yourself. 0 out of 10. How much can I deal with somebody's emotional reality in my world? You drop down to the gut. Now, I don't make any note on the thing because I have body issues. So once I tried to draw a circle and it made me feel weird, so I just didn't. But we are addressing the gut.
Okay.
We are addressing the gut. And we are considering that as unaddressed realities of emotion, but we do not judge it. Right. So what I'm saying is, I'm saying, for instance, this. I've noticed that lately I have not been holding up my boundaries. I don't really know yet how to fix that, but I know that I've noticed it, and I know eventually I need to check that, but not today. Or maybe you wake up and I'm just anxious and I don't have time or energy to diagnose why, but I'm acknowledging that when I woke up this morning, I felt a little anxious.
Okay.
Now,
Oof, this one's a bad one for me.
well, it's only, but no, it's only bad because you notice it at times that you're overwhelmed. If you start the day noticing you're a little bit anxious, you actually reduce its effect on you. Because when you start to do something that anxious is driving, you already know, oh, I'm doing this because I'm anxious. And that's the control arm. Is you
Yeah.
don't look back at the day and say, why did I do that? You said, oh yeah, I did that thing because I'm anxious. And because I know I did it because I'm anxious, it's acceptable. There's no judgment. I knew I was
Yeah.
anxious. I did something while I was anxious. It all makes sense. If
Mm-hmm.
you didn't know you were anxious and you did something that was anxious driving and you just can't source it, all day you're going to wonder, why did I do that? The power's gone. You don't know why you did something.
I think
You've
it's the
always had the
judgment
power.
part for me, like for zero judgment. I'm like, that's hard. It's like hard for some reason for me to
But
not judge myself.
this is diagnostic.
Yeah,
Don't forget,
true.
this
True,
entire
true.
meditation is clinical.
Right, okay.
There's no why and there's nothing to change.
Just do it the way
Nothing's
it's supposed to
changed.
be done.
No need to know why.
Yeah.
Acknowledge what is within you at the moment
Right.
and train yourself to know it without checking in why, what I need to do about it. The reason my guides are so gifted and I'm so grateful to them is because this is a perfect tuning meditation. And I couldn't have known that. I'm not smart enough to do this. It is perfect because it trains you in all the things of getting in alignment, the training of getting into your body enough and getting into your mind enough. You're checking all the boxes. I have to be in my brain to know what's going on. I have to go into my heart to know what's going on. I have to go into my gut to write down what's going on.
Just
But
identifying it.
also, yeah, but on top of it, it teaches you to get your energy to go where you want it to go. Consciousness is like a lens. It looks where you want it, where you make it look, but it's undisciplined to most people. So when you say, I want you to look in my head, there's a good chance you might feel first. You're like, no, I told you I need my brain. What's in my mind? You focus and you get that.
Right.
You're training your energy to give you what you asked.
I like
Then
that.
you say, I'm going to my heart. So that's why they're independent. That's why they're without judgment, and they are not to be changed. You don't say, oh, I have no strength today. I'm going to go drink significant amounts of caffeine to get the illusion of having more strength. Now, you can still drink a bunch of caffeine and know that that is what your day holds when you notice your strength is 0. But you're not changing the diagnostic. You're responding to the diagnostic. Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Because you are honoring who you are in the moment that you do this.
Yeah.
And then by that evidence, you have more self-possession than most people walking around the world right now, everywhere you go.
That's a good
If
point.
you do this every day, you're so much more in tune with who you are. And you will actually begin to notice other people's lack of alignment. And you will have more empathy when they do weird shit because you realize, I think their drivers, they don't have any strength today, and they have built their day as though they have more strength than they do. You see?
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
Last part, we drop into the legs, and we call this locomotion. And this is a little bit more in the line of less diagnostic and more judging what makes sense based on the details you just acquired. How fast is your day? How quickly can you get everything done? And this needs to be appropriate to you based on this information. If your temperament is 0, your strength is 0, everything's 0, you are not going to pack that day of anything, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
Because you need to get some of those batteries up and
Mm-hmm.
running again.
Mm-hmm.
So you are really self-abusing yourself if you put 0 and all those things above, and then you make your day crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Who would do that? The logic is not there anymore. So that's when you look and you say, this is not my best day. I do have to get to work. There's things that we can't really move, but I'm not going to pack my day full of things I've told myself I need to get done. This is not a good day for that. The day that you wake up and you do have a good temperament and do have a good strength, that is the day that you say, oh, this is the errands day that I've been waiting for. My energy feels good. I finally got enough sleep. Here we go. Locomotion needs to be thought of as, and if you find yourself struggling, if you notice you have a tendency to lean towards, I've got a ton of locomotion, that really might be a sign that you have a belief system within you that's not real. And it's so subconscious, it's making you not realize it even as you do this meditation. That's okay.
Wait, what do you
But
mean?
if, like, for me, if I have a trigger around that my self-worth has to do with what I can get done,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to naturally skew that every time
Oh, geesh.
because I need to believe in myself that my locomotion is very high to feel good about myself.
Yeah, like if I
So
don't accomplish
that makes
anything,
that,
then I'm not worth anything.
so you'll notice that when you do this, you're really spot on everything, but maybe locomotion, you're noticing, I don't know if that's realistic. I might not know myself very well on that topic. Or strength. If you always think you're full of strength, and every time, if you go back through your notes, your daily notes, and you notice strength never moves, you realize you're lying to yourself because strength does move. So what do we need to dig into that to know ourselves more so that knowing of ourselves is more dynamic because we don't stay stable in much. That's the reality. But as you do this more, you'll notice things even out
Mm-hmm.
because you just know yourself more. The more you know yourself, the more you command yourself. So before you know it, a year and a half of this, your temperament may stop changing. Your locomotion may become more stable because everything else is more stable. You're more in alignment with yourself, so these things don't change as much.
Mm-hmm.
But the alignment of oneself comes through the process of learning yourself and changing a lot. It's the process of knowing yourself and adjusting in tandem. It's the process of creation, right? Know yourself and act. Know yourself, act. Know yourself, act. That's creation.
This is,
Otherwise, it's chaos, action without knowing.
yeah, actually, this is very helpful because I feel like in the last couple years, I've been really working on my just temperament. And like, there's all
Mm-hmm.
of these other things that I didn't really think about. And I feel like even so, even when I do start working on these or just checking in, my temperament will get even better. But yeah, I don't know.
Well, we're gonna go into that in depth here. I just want to end it by saying I put little feet always at the very end,
Mm-hmm.
and then that all you say at that point is you say I'm grounded,
Okay.
and there is and I'm going to very specifically in this scenario when you say I'm grounded, that means these things. That means the connection is off, the meditation is done,
Mm-hmm.
and everything of that has been honored. Because what that allows us to do is if we have a tendency to worry or judge ourselves throughout, if we don't close that energy of diagnostic, we're going to be doing that all day. And that will drive a person crazy.
Draining.
This is a snapshot of what is when the day started, just like our natal chart is a snapshot of the stars when we started.
Mm-hmm.
But then the day gets going.
Mm-hmm.
Things change, right? And they're meant to. So by the middle of the day, if you're judging your strength, you should be out of some of it. And if you've had a really bad morning, you should be out of all of it,
Mm-hmm.
right? So there's no reason we should be collecting this data at any point after the beginning of the day.
Yeah.
So that's why we close it down with I am
Okay.
grounded. No more diagnostic, no more self-judgment. We're going to live our life
Yes.
in attunement with what we know now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So back to and that was to me a very valuable meditation. I try to do it a lot. I sometimes get bad, but like I've found even for myself, I'm like, this is very, very helpful. Okay. Um, Now what you were kind of talking about and what my guys were picking up on, because when I texted you saying the emotional organization, um, because the many of the qualities about you have fine-tuned over the past 3 years. So your areas of doubt have stronger fences, they're telling me. So you've done a lot of work in containing the names of emotions. Fear,
Mm-hmm.
you've gotten better across the board, they're saying, at identifying and maintaining empathy towards yourself about. But they're wanting to work on sort of almost like the flow chart of where you go emotionally, the
Okay.
organization of the emotions.
Okay.
So I'm going to see what they want. I'm going to figure out where they want to start with that.
Okay.
Okay. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're getting real. All
Okay.
right, let's do it. Okay, so they're kind of going back to the childhood, right? And they're highlighting this reality where not only was there a lot of suddenness around you, and it almost is suddenness as though almost loud noises. So everything they're showing me kind of like everything had a jumpiness to it around you,
Mm-hmm.
and you are highly, highly, highly sensitive. So imagine and not abused in the sense of your energy was naturally delicate when it got here. So in the same way as like a shy dog, almost they're showing me where it's like no, nothing bad has happened to the dog yet, but it's still jumpy. Whereas then
Mm-hmm.
you'll have another dog in the litter that is smelling everything, running around already. So your natural nature when you got here, you actually require a lot of peace. If you were trying to maybe attune your environment, quiet. If you were tuning your energy, softer tunes and softer noises, things that flow, anything that causes that jumpiness in you, it reverberates into your childhood. And we both know, and I'm not going to get into why, but they're showing me we understand that that was not always in your highest good, and that there were usually high consequences for you after the jumpiness occurred. And I mean that in literal situations as much as I mean that in life-changing events.
Mm-hmm.
So you have real reason to have embodied that internally and also fear it in the external world. So
Mm-hmm.
understanding that sudden change of energy as being kind of almost like your worst expression of energy has made you desire to dampen the world, right? Because, and this is the truth for a lot of people who are sensitive for different reasons. It is not a wonder that I have struggled with substance abuse in some ways, and it's
Mm-hmm.
not a physical thing. It is a very mental thing for me, because my desire is to suppress the surrounding world, because in my childhood it was very intense, and so I would go into books to read.
Mm-hmm.
But now when I got older, my book turned into promiscuity and alcohol, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my core nature, I've always been very giving, I've always been very sweet, I care a lot about people in some ways, and I can be apathetic too. But so that's sometimes why we see the kindest, most interesting people suffering from addictions, because we associate that with bad judgment, bad people making
Yeah.
bad decisions. And it's so often, every single time, more than that, a desire to make the world less intense, an
Mm-hmm.
inability and a lack of adjustment to handle its intensity, or an attunement to seeing ghosts in every corner that maybe aren't there that make me want to avoid it, right? So these are all the reasons that we interject distractive elements into our life. I say all this to say they want very strongly there to be the presence of acceptance and forgiveness till you die in your life, whether that is a tattoo, whether that is a charm, whether that is a charm that is irrelevant to a physical thing, but maybe the combination of a heart, like a sequence, right? Like a heart, a crescent moon, and a star. And that is the sequence for you that resembles a transformative experience with yourself, as well as a forgiveness of why and what you avoided and how you chose to avoid. And understand that a lot of that hinged deeply upon your upbringing for reasons that don't even have to do with, like, we assume that it's between people. It's like, well, my mom hit me, my dad sexually abused me, my brother sexually, like, we think it's always some core event that happened with another person. And there might be things of that nature in people's past, in your past, who knows? I'm not. But what I feel
Mhm.
most impactful about that topic and sort of the
Mhm.
hiding of the world and where it began, something about the instability of your environment and the fact that things seem to just happen and they hit you so loud and so deeply at one time. Because some people process, oh, that was loud, I'll get scared or I'll get angry. And then they process later, maybe hours later or
Mhm.
days later. You were very fast. You're very you're very, that hurt my feelings. And now I'm going to be deeply wounded by it. That's just your energy. Your energy actually, it's almost like it spins very quickly. And yet it's almost like another vibration that spins quickly with you. You cannot handle that. You need the slowing down. So you're not
Mhm.
amplified by similar energy. You are healed by the opposite of it. And I guess maybe that's why is this your energy naturally spins quickly, but your sensitivity became negative to you. So in a
Yeah.
perfect world,
Oh, yeah.
if you had different circumstances, you would be like still high energy, but just like that would be focused on something else.
I've
Anyways,
always been
so the whole
sensitive,
point
and
to say all that.
I've always been told that I've always been made to feel like because I am so sensitive that make is not a good thing. That's a bad thing. Like, I don't know if I've just taken it
No,
that way, but
it's you need to be in alignment with an environment that sensitivity, untouched and unrepressed, finds nothing but comfort and enjoyment. That is your job to yourself, because your nature when you came here is that sweet. And sweetness and sensitivity at its core, unattached to thought forms or expectations, similar to being like a villain, victim, like sensitivity
yeah.
unrelated to any outcome is very
Mhm.
beautiful. And it's also your streamlined to your gifts. So
Mhm.
if you try to repress the sensitivity and then you go say, well, but I'd also like my gifts to express, both cannot be true. So shit, you might as well get really in tune with your sensitivity and really start to begin to honor it and really
Right.
understand it, to work around the negative side of it and to really utilize the positive side of it. That's a goal to set. And
I
who
do
knows when
think
you set
it's a
it and
good
who knows how
thing.
long you want to get it done.
I do think it is
Well, it
a
is
it's a
the
superpower that I really haven't tapped into quite yet.
well, let's go into that then. Let's spend, because they want to. And we are going to put it as the name of the page. And so I'll do this with you and I'll bring this to you if you want it, but because I want you to be able to focus on me as well, but feel free to carry on. Okay, so sensitive. That is a state. The word is not I was sensitive. I am sensitive. So even write that
Mhm.
above. I am,
Mhm.
and let's put very. I am very sensitive. So it's an understanding of you are more sensitive than most. More sensitive than who? Doesn't matter, but very denotes more than usual. All right.
Mhm.
And then we are going to place, okay, they want a line down the middle. Okay. On the right side of the page, we are going to discuss how it serves you. And more importantly, they want this to be said more importantly, how does it serve others?
Mhm.
And then the opposite side of it will be, how does it not serve you and how does it not serve others? And that is, if you were my student, frankly, this would be your homework. You're not my student, and you would do this in private. You would do this in almost a quasi-meditative state. You would do this in a place that you feel the most safe, and you would do this without judgment. You would do this as an acknowledgement of experiences that you have had. So you're not going and saying, well, I think it might affect people this way. I think it might affect me this way. We want evidence of your existence. Where has this helped you? Where has this helped others? Where has this not helped you? Where has this not helped others? That is the beginning step of gaining control on what you perceive as something that is a gift and something that is of high good to you, but you avoid the topic or you are uncomfortable with it because there seems to be a reason for you to be shy of it, that you feel that it is harmed more than good, or that at some point it was out of control, but now you do feel you have more control of it, but simply because of your past, you don't trust it again. You're still not all the way up to the new version of you. So the doubt says, I trust that the past version of me might be more strong than the new version of me.
Yeah.
And the reason they want you to do this in particular about how it helps others is because that will be the thing that tips the scale.
Right.
Because if true, if it is an imbalance, sometimes you do believe that it's really good and to use it more and to understand it more. And sometimes you're like, why did I do that? I flipped out for no reason. How do I control that? Now, we have to go and that's work for you to do. But now I'm going to talk to you about what they want to be said.
Okay.
Sensitivity is not a goodness or a badness in any way, shape, or form. Sensitivity is a higher knowing of what is true. A higher knowing of what is true. And so if you are around somebody and they are behaving as though they are kind and sweet, but then they are not. And you have to behave with them that they are kind and sweet and that you have to be kind and sweet back to them. Even though you know, because you're sensitive, that they're a bad person, that is a lot of energy required from you to engage with that person. You have to uphold a lie that you know is a lie. And then you have to act out of your character, because really, anytime you meet somebody who's not a good person, you don't want to be a good person back to them, potentially. There's not really a reason to be. Like, we just don't really want to deal with them. But society creates a need that you can't. I think you're a bad person. I'm not going to talk to you. But you recognize you will be burning your candle the faster that you deal with that person. So before you know it, you're going to snap faster because you're sensitive to a truth that it doesn't cost other people. You pay a higher price for existing because you're sensitive to more details. That's why they say ignorance is bliss. It really is.
Boom, bam.
Even what we talked about earlier today that I don't want to go into detail about, but that we discussed outside.
Yeah.
If I were not more evolved, that entire thing really 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 3 years ago would have done a couple things. It would have pissed me off. It would have made me feel cooler than other people. So it would have gone straight to my head. And I might have toyed with the energy. I might have enjoyed squeezing more of those feelings out of that individual just because. Right? Because to me, that would be the price of making me feel irritated with you. And again, you could see how that's a less evolved version. But because of where I sit now, my interest was to maintain the reality I wanted, which I have achieved. And then my desire was to go and follow up and make sure that that energy felt protected. Because I recognize there's a reason to feel maybe that energy did not feel protected. So that's all. Everything I needed out of that search, everything that I needed to act on in that circumstance is done. I got what I wanted in my independence. And I know that I feel that I have done what I can to improve that person's feelings towards me and towards that circumstance. That's all. Now I get to wipe that shit away. And other than this conversation, I'll never think about it again. Because that's what it means to have freedom from the past. That's what it means to have freedom from events, decisions we make. It's like, and even just the process of identifying, I could have done that poorly. I could have really been a rude person and really what I described about who I was 5 years ago. And even in that acknowledgement, you still have to let it go. Although maybe if you feel guilt, that means when you feel guilt, there's a part of you believes that you should be acting differently. So maybe clue on that, see what you need to change about it. But still, don't bring that topic up over and over and over again because we can't change the details of it. We can take details from it, make a decision, but we have to release from the energy because that energy is alive. This is what people don't understand about the past and the future. It is as alive as the present. So when you go charge up a topic of the past, it is living. And there's a part of your energy that is in resonancy with that event. So my example would be this. If you're in a relationship, a new relationship, and sometimes we overshare because we're women and da-da-da, and you have a trauma, and you believe that by sharing this trauma, you're being open and vulnerable, and that's what it means to be trying to connect with somebody, so you're doing all the right things. But what you've done is you have amplified something that has resonancy in the energy. You've lit it up essentially because you're thinking about it. You're giving it attention. You're giving it energy, life force. And you've also given it to another person who wasn't there. And you don't have a ton of ways to mitigate the details. So now they have what you said, but when they go home, they might get to wonder about it. And you might get to wondering about what they're wondering about it. And then before you know it, there's a ton of energy around this traumatic event. And it is beginning to have ripples out of itself in your energy. So if that trauma, because of the event of it, in the moment it happened, caused you to have distrust, by bringing it up and speaking about it and breathing life into that, you will find you start distrusting friends and family in your environment again because it's been relit. Now, there's good and bad to that. It's not a judgment, but understand how energy works. If you notice that you're distrusting outside of that trauma and you know where the trauma started, you have to go and light it back up, right? There's value to that function. You go and you sit and you meditate and you think, I'm finding that there's more distrust than is serving me in my environment. Kind of don't know why, doesn't really need to know why, but I'm going to go to a big origin point and I'm going to try to soothe it. And I'm going, yes. Well, please remember, nothing I am saying about this topic is suggesting you do or do not do it. Everything is understanding what is occurring. Well, then what I would do in that circumstance is well, no, you're good. I mean, I would just make sure that I knew that in the aftermath of this therapy, I'm going to be weird. I'm digging up parts of myself are alive right now. And I need to be convinced once more that my energy is safe and that those events are of the past and that I have taken out of that event all that I can and I've made the right decisions, because that is how we release the past. We say to ourselves, have we gotten the details we need out of it? If the answer is yes, we don't have to look at it more. Have we made decisions to address what we don't like about it? If the answer is yes, your energy will release it anyway. Our energy keeps the past because we have not done those two things. We've not gotten all the information out of it, or we have not made decisions that close the cycle, or we have attached ourselves to the pain of it or the fear of it. Those are the reasons that we keep part of the past alive. Of course. Oh, I can't really see you that well, so don't worry, because sometimes you freeze, so don't worry about if I can see you or not. But does that help you understand when you ask about the... Okay. But the therapy thing... And that's the point and reason why we can't trust our emotions. Because after we leave a really good therapy session, we feel fucking jazzed and we feel like we can take over the world. But then what I would notice was by about 7 p.m., I'm wanting to sob. So we can't judge based on emotions. So the best we can do is we know energy lights something up. Let's make sure we know how that might behave. It starts to take a life of its own, right? I don't know why we got off on that, but I hope that helped. I can't remember. Oh, we were talking about sensitivity, and then we were talking about that it's neither good nor bad. Okay. Now, this is a different meditation. Now, the remedy to this for you, this is interesting. Give me 1 second. I got to let them finish. Okay. This is so weird, but I love this for you. All right. Do you have anything that is like an enclosure or a box? If you don't, I'm going to give you one. But like almost like like just a box that opens and closes. Okay. And if you don't, but what they want from you is they want you to acquire or place within work that you do with yourself, is the way that they phrase that specifically. So it's almost like if you have a journal that you're going to start for 2025, put it in there. If you have a favorite crystal that you work with a lot, that you have vulnerability with, you put it in there. Now, the reason they want this, and there's going to be other versions of this for you, but you have to learn how to dip into the sensitivity at its greatest form and back out into a less soft area as a function of existence. Just like you have to learn how to ride a bike, they're saying if there's one thing to focus on in your life in the upcoming months, they're not saying figure out why you're sensitive or how to not be. They're saying learn the tool to phase into solid and to phase into sensitive. And that will change just about they're saying the majority of your troubles will be fixed in that way, because that will translate into more logical boundaries without having to do 8,000 of talk therapy, how to strengthen boundaries through logic, because we're doing this work metaphysically. All right. So, and by the way, I don't know if you know, the rules to doing work metaphysically almost always end up in symbols. The box symbolizes a closure to you doing anything of deep work within sensitivity, in that it is believed to be protected. And so the reason and value would be that it creates a symbolism. Every time you do something sensitive, like hold it and meditate, you put it back in the box, just like you put that in a holistic way in the box. Because they're kind of, I need you to calm down. If you were to buy like a giant crystal, it's beautiful because it's big, right? And it's expensive because it's big. But you don't break it into small pieces so that other people can hold it, right? You would bring people in your door to come see the crystal. That's the difference of the sensitivity. You can't put it out there. It is for you to use when you want to use it, when you use it on people that you believe deserve it, not to be reduced so that you can exist in the world. Remember that. Remember that you can develop and grow your sensitivity in your own home, hone it, shine it, recarve it, recolor it. But what you can't do is do any of that out there. We have to learn how to have better spiritual hygiene. So we're going to talk about how to do that for you. What's your favorite color? Okay, perfect. What shade of green? Okay. And then what is your least favorite color? Perfect. Okay. So think about work and how chaotic it is. And the moment you walk in, it's batshit crazy, right? That's the nature of that place. It is always intended to be hypercharged. So we wouldn't want that place to change, because we'd be asking its identity to change. So, but we also can't change ourselves because we like to make money there. So what we do is when we think about aura, what we're actually discussing and talking about in my mind's eye is a space about 3 inches out of the body at most. It's not really that big around you. But in and around you, in your mind's eye, before you go anywhere or do anything that you feel and you've judged could be a risk to you via your sensitivity, you imagine your energy going from the beginning at the head down your body in the color of the green. And you breathe through it, and it's slow and controlled. And you start at the head, and you go down your head, down your shoulders, down your body, down over your feet. That is the, and then you're not done. You have a responsibility when you begin engaging with people to mark them as orange or green, and in variations. Imagine other people's energy as almost a fog, like a creeping fog, right? That's not their aura, but that is the way they're interfacing with the world which you are in the moment. So don't confuse those things. But people's intentions, people's, that feeling when like so and so looks at you needily, but you know that, but they're not talking to you. You just feel it. They're sending their energy out to you. That type of thing. It's that cloying fog, right? And I want you to feel and perceive when that fog is in the air and color it that ugly orange. Because that differentiates now that energy is not allowed into you. And you've already done the intentional labor to do some form of protection. Now, again, remember, anytime you ask your energy to do anything, it will only listen so much as you have energy and intent. So it's in fact, it's impacted by how much you think and focus the energy, intention, the intensity of it, thank you, the intensity of your intent. And the thing that fuels your capability of intensity is your life force energy. So if you're allowing all of your energy to somebody and then you go into work and you're like, make me green, protect me from this, but you have no energy because you just gave it away to all your friends and family, you won't feel any protection. Well, you will feel some, but it's only as good as. And that I'll die, every client, I will die on wishing that people understood that. Because all the people pleasing that we think protects us, or if you want to get real dark, the people pleasing that we think we can manage other people with to protect us, that is incredibly exhausting. The trauma of life is already exhausting and will always take its toll. When we get angry and we let all of our energy out in explosion, that's a hemorrhage of energy. So we're down that when that's done. Everything that we want out of life and our energy can only become vital if we generate energy and we have it still. So when you said earlier today, when you said, well, you can't pour out of a cup, it's not only that, it's when your tank is absolutely at full. Don't you want to save some of that for your own manifestation, for your own barrier, all the little things that are maybe not necessary, but that you want? Everything you want and that you have intention toward, calling it in or out or pushing things in and out, are only as good and as strong as the way that you've kept your energy. Period. Now, some ways that we can really benefit our energy, charging things, like there are realities about charging. You could literally be in the worst emotional mental state and you can stand and ground outside and in the sun, and that will charge you to a degree. But the reality of pain, yeah, of course. But the reality is, unfortunately, if you're not addressing what's causing you pain and sadness, you're going to just hemorrhage it the moment you're done charging, right? Because it burns. It burns in your soul. It burns up energy. So, yeah, you could, it's logical, right? You could go charge out there, or you could remove the thing that's draining you, or you do both, because both will get you where you need to go. Do which part? Oh, you mean like if you're hemorrhaging pain? Oh, I see. Yeah, I see what you're asking. Okay. Yes, they will go in on that, but they want to make sure, do you have any questions surrounding the ideas of how to protect your energy in a scenario where you cannot control your environment? Do you have any questions about that? Or are you good? Okay, perfect. Okay, so now we're going to move into how do we stop the holes of our energy, right? And again, this comes down to do you understand how energy works in order so that you can command it? All right, so within our energy is everything that we are and everything that we have chosen to concern ourselves with. That includes hobbies, that includes skills, that includes responsibilities, and also pains and hurts, and everything is in your energy, but it's not always active. Just like memories are always with you, but they're not always active. So one of the ways that they showed me this is everything that we are exists kind of in a honeycomb, and every honeycomb is its own thing, topic, whatever, person, whatever, and it's lit like a lamp or it's unlit. So when we have grief, it's all lit up, all the grief points. And oftentimes memories where grief is unresolved, right? Unresolved grief we would kind of call it living grief. So if it's just asleep, because we haven't looked at it in a while, that's great. But suddenly a life event causes living grief. Every other memory of grief pops its head up like, ooh, this is our vibration. It's our time to express ourselves. Because she's sad and we are sadness. So this is our fucking time to shine. Right? But think about this too. Just like excitement. So don't forget that. Every time you light up with excitement, you are also triggering living excitement of your life experiences. And then you get into a planning stage where you think, no, it's amazing. Thank God for that. Like, that's beautiful, right? Or every time we experience unconditional love, we light up in our history and technically in our future all the times that we have been unconditionally loved. It's living, it's living in a way, it's living vibration with the tonality language of love, with the tonality language of fear, right? Now, the reason this can be overwhelming for some and not others is now you have to recognize how much of someone's timeline is earmarked with fear, because that is proportionate to how much this event will destabilize them. So you have, and for you, I'm going to pick something specifically for you, grief. You have grief across your timeline, unrelated always to itself. And you have some grief that you have judged is your fault. So there is some grief that is also tinged with shame. So now when somebody that you love in the external world out here dies, you will have grief about that event. But you might notice within yourself that you are oddly or improportionately sad or depressed out of this event, even when you might logically say, this doesn't even make sense. Maybe I didn't even know him that much. Or why am I feeling so sad? I knew him so long ago. But the reality is, his death is a gift to those of us with living grief in our memory, because we're being given an opportunity to close it through his death, through expressing. He has sung out in his last breath the song of grief so that it will trigger within us the sleeping grief, so we can find it again, wake it up, and potentially quiet it, like not put it asleep, but even maybe just integrate it in a way that allows it. Thank you. They just said integrate it in a way that takes the life out of it, because you're not killing it, you're not removing it, because if you remove it, you can't remember the things you learned about it. We're taking the life out of it so that life can go. But no, they're calling it living. They're calling it life because as soon as it's out of that memory, it gets to go be somewhere else with you, right? So we really have to remember that sleeping energy in our past is energy we don't have access to. We can't harness it because it's earmarked in the past. So the more that we can clean out living energy from the past, the more vital we are anyway. See, now that's what you would do in a winter state, because you don't, and I say winter state, but really I mean hibernation. So it could be in the summer. I'm saying in a state where you feel and know you're less active, because you probably can't do both. It's really hard to go do internal work because it requires so much energy to then go exist out in the material world well, because we have an excess, we only have so much energy. So, for instance, if you were to do a meditation over a topic for yourself, you would want to plan it on a day off. So you have enough time to just recollect yourself and reenter. If you successfully remove the energy from the memory, you have time to reintegrate it and just chill. Like, that's the goal always. Get your energy back from the past and just integrate into the body. We understand, we look at the memory clinically, and we understand everything that we need to about it. And that it's a very, they're saying that so specifically, what you need to know about it, because we sometimes want to know stuff that isn't ours to know in a memory. And that's where we get stuck there, and we've all done it. Have you gotten out of it, technically, I guess, all of the lessons? No, they want me to go back. They said they want you to get all the data clinically, and then they want to know, and then the next step is to formulate that data into a lesson you can then implement the knowledge of. If there is no lesson, you honor it and you say goodbye to it. You honor it for all the details that you brought, that you know it, but there is no lesson. It was just an unfair thing. Right? And unfortunately, in order for us to remove the memory, the energy from the memory, it has to flow through us again in an active state. Which means if you're taking a memory where you're sobbing and crying, you're going to have to take that from the past into a present moment of sobbing and crying, maybe. Typically, though, when we pull energy from memories, it's not as intense, although sometimes it can be. But don't expect that you'll go through a memory of you sobbing and that you will actually be sobbing, but sometimes you might. But it does require some feeling of it. So you'll know you're doing the meditation wrong if you're just staring at a memory and you're not feeling it. You're not feeling the negative. The more you feel the negative in the memory, you get to take, now you've brought it to the current moment where you're living and you're logical. But the energy doesn't know it. The feeling doesn't know it. It's just living. It is existing. Think about that almost like a two-dimensional energy, but the dimension it's missing is soul and intention, but it's still time and space. It's still living. It's just living in your past, and you prefer it in the here and now. I'm trying to see if they want to say anything else about that. Okay, that's one conscious modality, because we can do that because that is how energy works. There is another modality, which is to say, well, there's so many, but there's one that's applicable to you in this way. When you acknowledge that there is energy vibrating not in the here and now, you ask that it return to a quiet state. Because there's a reality here where we can't go dig it out all the time. But we can command that it be still. That is our right. That is our dominion. And so we essentially, like, for instance, this happened to me the other day where I got really pissed about something. And I did not have any desire or time to process that authentically. Because really, I was irritated that I was irritated on top of it. So you have to be aggressive with your energy. You say, this is not the time. Like, I can be pissed the rest of the day, or I can't. I need to select the option where this becomes a dormant thing for me. It was about disrespect as well. So I've disrespected my timeline. So when I feel disrespect, I can get real hot real fast because it's everywhere in my timeline. And I haven't done a lot of work to manage that yet. So instead of going and dealing with it, I simply say, I recognize this is not current energy. Nothing but current energy needs to be active. Please. For me to operate in the world right now in the best way, I need only active memory at play. And that, again, is knowing yourself. And yeah, because think about it, is it not the same effect of I want to lose weight, so I tell my hand to not eat that food? It's the exact same thing. You're telling your energy, I can't go process this rage. It is not serving me right now. I need you to put it down. That is a commandment. You're supposed to. I don't always. That's when you go into avoidant shit, and I've done a ton of it, but you're supposed to. I don't think I did that day, which really all that means the next time I get enraged, that gets added on to the stack of disrespectful memories I haven't held and dealt with. So there's a cost to not doing it. And you see that in people that blow up out of nowhere for some reason, and you're like, "Oh, that wasn't about right now, was it?" Like that really wasn't. So one way I was going through a really, really deep depression in the winter, really, really bad around November, December. And so, but I was not willing to give up locomotion in my life, right? Remember I knew I had a pace, I wanted to have things done, and I knew that in order to do that and maintain all my strengths, I just can't deal with this all the time. But it was deep sorrow and a belief system that got re-triggered about that I will always be misunderstood and be very lonely. So what I chose to do was I would experience a deep sadness. And then if I located that this was a good time, so I'd wait till I felt it. I will admit that I wasn't good enough or big enough in a perfect world, I would have picked a day where I felt really good and then dove into the sadness. That's the best case scenario. But the way I did it almost every time, I did wait until I was already sad because I just don't I'm like, if I feel good, I can't sacrifice it. I'm sorry. Maybe when I'm 80, I'll be that good. But I would wait till I was already kind of sad. And then if it happened when I had the day off, I would go and make a conscious decision to sit with it. And what that really meant is I would do all the shit we don't want to do. I would sit there and think about, how do I feel about Ashley? I miss her. I miss that she's not my friend anymore. I still don't think there's anything I can do about it. I still believe in that memory that I had to go back and address that grief and go through the details again to pull it out again because the grief had been re-triggered. Yeah, because I don't know, there is no other way to do it because no matter what, sadness is a vibration and that's our right to feel it. It's a very beautiful feeling. But I've got to walk through the hallways again and go collect all the people because I've had a sad event. It's re-triggered. It's brought back life into all these sad events. I need to go check on it and make sure I've done the right duty, which is, do I have everything out of this memory that I can remember that is impactful to me? Have I done what I can to address it? All right, well then I respect this moment for bringing me sadness in that moment, but I put it back to rest. And then I would go through, I had to deal with some shit like about my family that I hadn't thought about in forever. Like just sadness about that. You know what I mean? It's like, but that's also the other reason why I cannot have a ton of sadness in my life. I limit the amount of sad things I watch. I limit the amount of sad music I listen to, even though I love sad music because I have a frequency that resonates with sadness, either because my soul is very used to it from a past life or because I came here to do work with sadness, so I had to experience it. Who knows why, but that is always going to be a tonality of my energy. So even when I'm 80 and I have all of my life behind me and I'm so happy, I will have days of melancholy. It just is in my song. So knowing that too, understanding I'll never get rid of it. We'll never get rid of it. The insecurities I have, I'll never get rid of them. I will put them to sleep as frequently as I can. And then I will admire myself for the fact that I can put them to sleep because you can throw a fucking rock into a group of 8 people and all 8 people of them have done no work to quiet any part of themselves. So take pride when you do this. No one else is doing it. It takes work to do it. No one else is doing that work. It takes seeking the knowledge to do it. No one's seeking the knowledge. You doing any of these things, or even as percentage of them, puts you above and more in power of your energy than the majority of your peers. And also understand that this is a muscle to be lifted up and down. This is not a relationship with what you do in your life that's good or bad. I've done this. I can have a bender that's crazy and pull myself out of that low vibration in the here and now and get back to work. What I cannot do probably is engage in behaviors that turn into habits, because then the energy of the habit can sometimes become stronger than my ability to operate with the gifts I want to have in the here and now. So I can have budgeted benders. I cannot do something so negative with habit, or I will start to notice a decrease in what I can get done. I say this to say you can meditate and do good work with yourself and have a bender. They're not mutually exclusive. You just would prefer to make the work your habit versus the bender your habit. I'm trying to think of anything regarding that topic they want to cover. Okay, we want to take it into the future. So what they want to talk about though is just like we can go into the back and revisit these memories and experience all this stuff, the reality about manifestation is that we are going and vibrating with this version of ourselves that we already expect to be true. You cannot do this with an expectation that you think you're going to be a millionaire. The odds of our life as we look at it right now changing so dramatically in that way switches it so much into, well, delusion at its worst state or creativity at some point. Because there is a fine line with that. Like if you sit here and you're like, I'm going to be a millionaire, really, the energy cannot bridge that gap in some ways. In some ways, they're making very specifics because there is a version of a highest vibration that could literally just wish to be true. We're not in that vibration, but they're saying that is how it works, just not at our density. But anyways, okay, so what we're really talking about is there is a memory, right? Because everything that is will eventually be a memory. So they function all the same, even though it's the future. There's a memory where you are radiating with acceptance and love. In the past, in the present, in the future, potentially. When you sit there and you think about, huh? Oh, what? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Well, because hope. No, I mean, well, there's a reality when we look in the future and we can pick the vibration of the future we want to see. We have to name it. And then we have to believe that it is in our future somewhere. We don't got to know the details, but we know it's true because it's been true in the past. So unless you die, there's not a good reason to believe it won't be in the future. When we go and we seek that vibration in the future, it resonates in a way that acts like a compass. So then when you sit and you go like right here and you're like, okay, I believe in the future that I have abundance and abundance with the name of love. And you don't get specific. You don't say, but I'm in love with this guy and he's 6'5" and da-da-da, and that was my unlimited love. You say there's a moment of time where someone is unconditionally looking at me, wishing to bring about within me the highest version of myself. And when I look at them, I want that for them. And that is the definition of love. That is a metaphysical definition of love. Then that moment will begin to vibrate. And as you take steps one in front of the other into the future, your energy will remember which direction it can help you get there. Manifestation is never about creating in the future what you want. It's already there somewhere because everything that ever could be is already there. You just want your consciousness to get there on this timeline. So you have to name what you're looking for so that version of the universe pops its head up and then you feel it. So there's a diagnostic meditation that you can do when you name something you want to see in your future. And so for you, I'm going to go along the lines of the love. And so we start with the idea and we say, there's a version of a period of time where I am being loved. I'm in the experience of knowing that that is happening and I am loved regardless if I'm asleep, awake, near them, not near them. And then we're not going to do the meditation right now because it's very private, but I'm going to talk it out as though we are. But essentially, you would say, this is what I'm looking for. This is the destination. That's the GPS. And you close your eyes and you start to just feel what you can about it. And so the questions always are what? Why? Why am I being loved right now? Well, it kind of feels like I'm pretty supported in life. By what? Like, why are you supported in life? Well, I've built a life that feels supportive. And not just why, but also how. So we're digging into details of this. We went to the moment in time, a GPS, right? And then you have to use intuition to feel around it. And not only will this train your intuition naturally, and you're going to feel crazy, right? Of course we do because we can't prove it. But once you do this enough times, you'll start to you'll understand why it's true. You'll understand what's true about it. You'll feel the vitality of it. But when somebody's never meditated in their life and then someone says, yeah, this is true and the vibration of truth is in it and they can't feel it, then they just say you're probably crazy. So I get it, but you will feel it over time. You just have to practice it. And you will be surprised the details you start to get the more you do it, because then you'll realize, wow, there's a cat there. I don't own a cat. Maybe that means at one point you'll own a cat, because there is energy of a cat near proximity, what you're feeling about love. And then you also feel, well, but it feels like that it is there because of me. Well, then that has to mean it's your cat. Or maybe you're dating somebody and you convince them to get a cat. So you see the details as they emerge, but they're not clear always. But the details start to come out. So you have a moment of love. But then suddenly you feel that someone is criticizing you, right? Well, then the intuition would be, if I set the GPS to love and I'm feeling, I landed in this conversation of criticism, but then I start to feel worry. Well, you've landed in a moment of tough love. Somebody has tried to love you enough to make you feel this uncomfortable and this because when you send your energy out for a vibration, guess which ones you're going to land on? The ones that spike the most. They're the easiest to see. So when you look to the future, you're finding the moments of highest, typically. And again, don't forget, whatever vibration you are at the moment that you're doing the meditation will have a role. It does not limit it, but it will have an effect on it. So for instance, if you've had 3 weeks of down in the dirt and you know your vibe's been kind of low for a second, and you do a charging meditation to get your vibration high, just recognize it probably won't be as high as you've had it before. And understand that there's a potential within that vibration to have more doubt and more uncertainty in the feeling. So if you start having doubt and uncertainty, just recognize this might not be a great time to meditate. Sometimes we just don't have it in us. I hope that's helped. No, see, and that's part of the problem. Is like we're sorry when we cry. Why are we sorry when we cry? Well, theoretically, it would be because we recognize that for you to cry, that energy is now sitting between us, and we both have a choice to transmute it. But you saying sorry is doing two things. Well, no, I'm explaining. Hold on, I'm explaining. They want me to go through this scenario in a hypothetical. I'm not saying you, but this is the mechanics of it, and they want that stated. So once we have out there either any kind of emotion between two people that now there is responsibility to it, that's why we say sorry, because we recognize that other person might have to do something. But when you say sorry, you're assuming that I've agreed to. I don't know that I have. So don't ever feel that you have to say sorry, because it is more important for you to admire your expression of the tears than it is for you to worry about what answer I will say to my question of, will I join you in this? I have to make that choice. You don't get to make that choice for me, nor should you assume. So that really removes the reason to say sorry, because you're saying sorry because you think, now we've got to deal with this. You've got to deal with my tears. You've got to deal. I don't have to. I can choose to. And now you will. Next time you're crying and you say you're sorry, I bet you anything you'll say, no, I'm not. And you'll know why you're not. Half of our that's why spirit is so amazing. Neither have I. I'm not this smart. But we are all given I'm in connection right now. I'm smart because I'm in connection to a collective that has done this a lot. And when I say this, I mean life and living. So I can look at your situation. I can look at a situation empirically and start pulling all of this data that I didn't earn. That doesn't mean the next time I am dealing with this situation, I will do it well, because it's unearned logic. I've still got to deal with that. Like, I've still got to, I don't get to have all this great insight and then suddenly walk through the earth with it because I forget it because it's not a lesson I learned. It's information that got dropped to me. So it will leave unless I cement it somehow, which sometimes I can try to, but just recognize I don't always get the fruits of this labor. Not always. Sometimes I do, though. Well, yeah, but I just mean to say, like, dude, it's not me. Terry was the one who taught me this, but she always said, if the message is good, thank the guides. And if the message is bad, I'm sorry. And that's truly the way it is. It's like, if I deliver it bad, my bad. But if it's good, it's all them. Yeah. Well, and thank you to yours. I hope this has helped. Do you have any last questions? Well, well, okay. I will leave you with this last topic, and then I realize we've got a long time, and they're also telling me absorption rate is slowing. So, um, for you, I'm not saying that's bad or good. I'm just saying they don't want to overwhelm you with stuff that will not be absorbed. Okay, we'll end it with this though. Okay, you are going to pick a consistent thing that you do with your body, like driving, like laundry, like doing tins and trays, like anything where it is something that you have to do that you typically have to driving. Yeah, I already said that. Like that, but that is very monotonous and requires zero creativity. That's the key too. Can't have any self creativity. You are going to spend that time only opening at the point of beginning that process and ending it at the end of the process. So it's a beginning, start, and finish. And you are going to essentially open up. Imagine that field around you, that green field that's always charged. And one of the ways you charge it, by the way, is you reaffirm to yourself out loud or energetically, this is my guard to the other energy, not mine. This is the barrier to what I do not expect or want to feel. Oh, what's wrong?